Hey, I'm Stephanie, the founder of Be Generous. In 2009, really, I was calling out to the Lord. It was a cry for more, a cry for just really a desire to do more for the Lord. And I found that there was this amazing organization that was partnering with Huggies to cover every little bottom so that we could establish a diaper bank in our own area. And that gave us the threshold, the opportunity, the door to open into getting into the homes of these women in our community. And so we started making house visits. Caseworkers in our local agencies, state agencies would call Be Generous to go into the homes and to help with those tangible necessities, those tangible items that they needed. But then what we were really finding out that there was more tangible necessity of Jesus Christ is what they really needed.
My name is Eddie Mansfield. I'm the managing director of the Path of Grace. I've been working with the Path of Grace for approximately 8 years now. Since I've known Stephanie, what she's always done is she's brought women to the Path of Grace that needed help. She's always out there looking for people that need help, and they just happen to find her. She's like a magnet to ladies that are struggling with different things, addiction, abuse, in all areas.
I'm Lisa Morgan, and I will be the house mom at the Yellow House. And my heart behind this is I have the desire to see women overcome their trials and their tragedies that they've had in their life. I also have the desire to see them reunited with their children and their family. I want to see them completely restored and be able to follow in the path that God has for their lives.
Hi, my name is Tara Beard, and I am on the board of directors for Be Generous. And I'm the leader of the local strip club ministry in the area. I met Stephanie McMinn right around 2014, and instantly our hearts connected. And shortly after that, the Lord had put on my heart that He wanted me to go feed the strippers. Literally, that's what He said, go feed the strippers. Stephanie was already in my life and was, of course, there to support me and be a part of this vision that the Lord had given me. Shortly after that, I had met Sula, and her heart was to minister to girls in the sex industry as well. So we have actually been going in to the clubs now for over 3 years.
My name is Sula Skiles, and I am the trafficking survivor advocate for Be Generous and the Yellow House. I'm really passionate about this area and serving in this role with Be Generous because I'm a survivor and overcomer of sex trafficking myself. Many years ago, I was exploited and trafficked through the modeling industry and sold to a billionaire in another country, and just experienced it was a nightmare. Being able to come out of it and to survive that and overcome has now made me obviously so passionate about doing something for others that are still trapped in the dark. At Current, my husband John Skiles and I are pastors at Impact Life Church here in the Panhandle, and when we first moved to this area, I immediately looked for an organization that was doing something about trafficking. And was just full of joy when meeting Stephanie McMinn and realizing that we shared so much of the same passions to help women that are in the middle of desperate, traumatic situations.
There was a young lady that we were helping in the community. The situation was that we found she was struggling with an addiction to meth. She had already lost her son to the custody of her family member, and she was working with local agencies to gather resources. We found, as we started reaching out, for her on her behalf, to find her a program, that she could enter into to get help. We were finding that there were no beds available. She didn't fit the criteria to enter into the program. So in the process of working through with her, trying to find this long-term program, and getting the answer back after doing all the paperwork and everything, that it was going to be a 6-month waiting, I cried out to the Lord, and I was like, God, this can't be the case. Like, in 6 months, she'll die.
The Path of Grace receives, I would say, 3 to 5 calls every day from a family member of an alcoholic or an addict, or the alcoholic or addict calls, looking for help. And 9 times out of 10, we have to turn that individual away. A lot of times, I'll give a call to another program out of state. We'll send them, there's a lot of resources in Alabama, not so many in Florida, in the Panhandle area. The sad part to that is, if you don't find them a place and help them, and you just tell them that you can't help and you hang up, that person might be the next victim of a death.
We have a girl who is ready to transition out of dancing, but she needs a place to live, and we're praying for this apartment to open up for her. But if it doesn't, where do we go from there?
A lot of times these ladies that are trying to get into the Path of Grace, they're living on couches, or they're living out of their car, or they're living in drug houses.
One girl specifically was reaching out for help on her own for 5 months. She and a friend of hers were calling every anti-trafficking organization and safe home that they could possibly get numbers for, all throughout the state of Florida, and found no success. This sweet woman had just escaped from her pimp and was extremely discouraged in dealing with all of the trauma that she was going through from being exploited and pimped out for many years. And she was really down because she'd tried so hard to find a place. So we, just a lot of prayer, a lot of intercession, and being led by the Lord in her life in the middle of a life and death situation for her. She knew that at any day she was going to die if her pimp found her.
Now's the time. Now's the time for the Yellow House to be established in the earth, to fill that gap, to be that bridge that we need. Because so often what happens is, we have a woman that we're working with, and there's no bed available. Either we can't get her into detox because there's a waiting there. We can't get her in a short-term program, here locally, because there's not any. So we're going out to Mississippi or Alabama, and even they have a waiting list for their own areas to be serviced. Or there's a long-term program that has a bed, that might be available, in a month, when someone graduates. That's the problem that we run into, and that's the place where the need is. That's where the gap is. We need to be the bridge, and we need it now.
I started using it about age 15. I started out using alcohol, marijuana, and I really enjoyed the escape that produced for me from many different things, whether it was, traumas I had experienced as a child, family issues, whatever it was such like a mental escape for me. So I continued to use drugs all throughout my high school years. I even got to the point where I had no new drugs to try, really. So I would order drugs offline off of a website, and they would come in the form of research chemicals. And so I would get them in the mail and just kind of play around with them until I got to the point where I started using prescription painkillers. After the prescription painkiller, that was where things really started to get out of my control. It was such a, I don't know, it was almost like a familiar feeling. And it was like this is it. I found something that's going to numb me to the point where, I can handle things and I can live life and be able to bear it. At that point, that really sent me on a downhill spiral because I developed a tolerance to painkillers. That went on and on until it got to the point where it was cheaper to buy heroin. That is when I got into heroin. I started getting bored with heroin, and then I got into fentanyl, and I would mix the two. And then I got bored with my method of administration. So I ended up intravenously administering the drugs. That is a whole nother level of addiction in itself, because then at that point I had also developed the addiction to that type of administration. So the breaking point really came for me when the drugs started to kill me. I essentially had nowhere else to go. My family was pretty done with trying to help me, and without me showing any promise of progress. I was running from the law. I was running from people in the community. And my liver started to shut down. My glands started to swell up in my body. I weighed about 98 pounds, and I knew that, that was going to be my only shot. Like, if I wanted a shot at life at all, this was going to be it. And that is when I had reached out to Stephanie, though she had been reaching out to me for years prior, but at that point I just wasn't ready.
So I received the call from the detox center that we had put her in, and they said, "You're going to have to come and get her. She needs the hospital. Like, we can't be liable for her. We're not going to be able to keep her. We need you to come get her." So I loaded up and headed to Panama City, praying on the way there, "God, what do you want to do? Like, what do we do with this one? What does this look like?" She's lit up like a Christmas tree. Even the detox facility did not know what to do with her. So how am I going to know what to do with her? And so I get there to Panama City, and here she comes, this frail little one, barely able to stand and walk. We literally had to carry her out. When you have a young lady in your lap that is dying, and you know that you're her only hope and her only way out because of He who is in you, you can't help but say yes. And so not having a bed available anywhere to take her to, knowing that even a local recovery center that's not faith-based, we tried that, and they said, "We can't keep this one."
Before reaching out to Stephanie and Be Generous, I had been through 4 different rehabilitation programs, 30-day rehabilitation programs. They weren't effective because I wasn't ready. They had no real promise of any type of hope. It essentially to me was, you are an addict, you're going to be an addict for the rest of your life, and you better wake up every single day and beg and plead that you don't use drugs that day. And I just knew that, if that was the case, I would have rather just continued to live the life I was living.
I prayed about it and made a decision with the Lord that I would take this one in on my couch. I would take her in.
Be Generous started working with me, and it was really different in the aspect of, I wasn't a patient in some facility, and I wasn't institutionalized in some facility. I was a daughter, and I was a family member, and I was treated as such. And it was a real love. It was something authentic that I just didn't feel in a hospital or a institutional type environment. And even the luxury rehabs, it just wasn't like that. Those people show up and they get paid to feed me medication and make sure that I'm okay, and that just wasn't the case with Be Generous or with Stephanie. She took me into her own home. It was something real. So Be Generous helped me in a way to actually bridge into another faith-based program that had a bed available that I attended for legal reasons at that time. And in the process of the time spent between the beginning of detoxing and the time when the bed was actually available, Stephanie and Be Generous became that bridge for me. And it helped me so much in the fact that, even through the night, because I was still detoxing and things were still happening, and that is a really hard time in someone's, choice to get clean. Because that, the mental aspect of that and the physical withdrawals of that itself will send you right back to where, you came from. And Stephanie was so faithful to use Be Generous to, house me and love me, even through the nights and the pains and the doctor visits, everything. Every need that I had emotionally, physically was met through Be Generous in that time of bridging before I was sent to another faith-based program, which she works closely with. Everything started to change in the process of recovery going through the program. I started encountering God in a way that I didn't even know was possible in my childhood, in my teenage years. I was never introduced really to that type of thing. My physical body started to grow and become better, and I started gaining weight. Everything started coming back, senses that I had lost through the numbing process of drug use. Most importantly, though, was the metanoia, the change in the way that I viewed things, the change in the way that I thought. My thought processes started to come in alignment with God, and that in itself is a miracle. So I've stayed clean for 3 years as of April 27th, 2019. And a lot of that had to do with Stephanie checking up on me, calling me. She would come and visit me, make sure that I was doing okay. Yes, I definitely would advocate for the Yellow House and do, because in that time of the critical moment between I'm in detox and the program doesn't have a bed quite available for me yet, that is such a running time for people to run back to the drugs, to whatever addiction it is that was pulling them in that direction to begin with. And it was, I was so blessed, and it just so happened that Stephanie took me into her personal home, but how many more are out there running right back because of that gap, that period of time that's so vital to someone's recovery.
I smoked weed all through high school. I drank alcohol. I smoked cigarettes. It wasn't until a year after I had my daughter Kendall that I left my house searching and looking for something or somebody to fill the holes that I had inside of me. I was empty and I was lost, and I didn't love my daughter. I didn't love myself, and I didn't love the person that I was becoming and that I have been.
It was actually a complete joy with Sabrina. She was a beautiful, little girl that had a heart of gold. We had moved around, several times, but we had ultimately, found ourselves back here, in Destin. And, she started hanging around a few friends, which ultimately, led her to her first, relationship with a boy. But she ultimately ended up getting pregnant, with Kendall. The first pretty much year of Kendall's life, she was a great mom. I mean, she was trying to, she did everything. She breastfed, she was a good mom. She was going to school. She would pump at school and then, do everything. I just really started to notice changes in Sabrina. Her losing interest in Kendall, and wanting to be with her, with our family, being angry, not going to school, but actually skipping school while I'm watching Kendall, trying to do everything to help her still be able to succeed. She just became angry, distant.
So I left my house. During that time, my friend introduced me to meth. The first time that I did it, I fell in love with it. After that, I had a downward spiral. I robbed people, I stole, I lied, I manipulated. I did anything and everything that I had to do to get my next fix.
It didn't matter, who she was hurting, how it might be affecting Kendall or, any of us, because it's like, you go from watching your daughter be something and then just totally change into a totally different person you don't even recognize.
I never felt anything when I was on the drugs. That's why I kept doing it, because I know what I had to do to get it. So I had to get more, because doing meth, you never feel anything.
When she left, I was calling, texting. I can't even tell you how many trips to Fort Walton, trying to talk with her, plead with her. But she was so disconnected that I don't think she heard anything, anything I said, or she ultimately didn't want to hear what I had to say.
My mom and my dad would come and try to find me, and they would follow me, and they would go to the dope houses and knock on the door and ask if I was in there. And when they did find me, they would cry to me and just beg me to come home, but I just didn't want to. And they didn't understand, and I didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing.
So ultimately, this is going on several months now, me pleading with her, trying everything, making multiple trips to find her. 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever, in the afternoon, I was constantly trying to track her down and find her and get through to her.
One night I was searching for money, and I got in contact with a girl who moved away from Florida and told me that she was someone named Stephanie McMinn that could possibly help me with some basic necessities.
So one night around midnight, I received a notification on my phone, and I normally would not answer it that late, but I just felt prompted to answer it. And a young lady that I mentor in the community, she was in Redding, California, going to ministry school at Bethel. She said, hey, I have someone that I went to school with that's reaching out to me, and it sounds like a pretty desperate situation. And I can't help her from here, but I told her that I had someone that I knew would help. And so I'm reaching out to you to see if you could give her a call. And of course, I said yes. I began to communicate with Sabrina through Facebook Messenger. And because the ministry that I do in the community, I'm used to people asking for tangible items that they need. And so I knew that it could potentially be a bait to go meet her, to go interact with her and see what was really going on, because it was very clear that she was desperate by the conversation that we were having, and that there was something really serious going on.
So I got her number, and I messaged Stephanie from Be Generous, and I asked her if she would give me money or help me in any way that she could. So the next day, Stephanie met me in Fort Walton, and she brought me groceries, she brought me clothes, laundry soap, makeup, contacts, And that was the first of many that Stephanie and her organization did for me when I was out on the streets in Vermont. The same night that I reached out to Stephanie McMinn, my mom was on her face and she was praying for me.
You can't sleep at night when you know that your daughter, at the time 18, on the streets, and the thought of potential things that could happen to her and what she's doing to herself. I just remember one night I couldn't anymore. I was so emotionally, mentally, physically drained. I was just desperate. I was desperate for the Lord to reach my daughter. And she wasn't listening to me. So I just remember, everybody was in bed. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I had prayed many times, but I don't know that I had really just facing the floor. Like, Lord, you've got to help her. I know this, isn't your plan for her by any means, and I know that if anything's possible, it's going to be possible with you, and you're going to be the only one who can reach her heart, that can, get somebody there. If it's not me, Lord, you've got to send somebody in her life that's going to get her out of this.
The following morning, I had to serve at a local food pantry. I was part of a prayer team. They had asked me to come and pray over the families that were receiving Thanksgiving meals. And I had not had many people come up for prayer, but the director came running out and said, "Hey, Stephanie, I have a specific person I want you to pray for." And I was like, "Oh, that's great. Send her my way." And so here comes this woman with bags in her hand, and I offer to carry them to the car. And I can tell she's in a rough spot. Like, I can tell that she's pretty emotionally, exhausted, and that she really needed a lifting up, an encouragement, an encouraging word from the Lord. And so at that moment, I just offered to pray with her. She was trying to hurry me off because she had a lot on her plate, but I was persistent and asking, can I just talk to you, and you just, share with me what's going on, and I would like to pray with you. So she began to tell me what was happening in her home. She started to explain to me about her daughter that was in the streets, and, with nowhere to go. She was living from couch to couch. She was using some serious drugs like crystal meth and no telling what else. She was hanging with really bad people and really bad places. And she just started bawling in the parking lot, sharing like what she had been through. And all of a sudden, Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, "It's her." And I was like, "Her? Like Sabrina?" And I said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you tell me, is your daughter's name Sabrina?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Hammonds?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Wow."
When she hugged me and said, asked me what Sabrina's name was, and told me that I've got your daughter. Sorry. But I just knew, in that moment, that God heard my prayers. And that not only did he hear them, but he was actually answering them. That he was telling me, "I've got this. I'm giving you, what you've asked for, and that I can rest, and that I could be held, because from this moment on, I wasn't in it alone." It was just like, I couldn't believe it. It was like I was blown away. I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. Like, this is crazy. But this is what has happened, and now I have somebody, and it gave me like I had no hope. I was literally, because it had gone on and it was going on, and my hope was very diminished at that point. But it was like everything just started rising up inside of me.
During that time that I was out on drugs, I got arrested again, and I violated my probation, and I caught 2 new charges. I sat in county jail for over a month, and when I went to court, I was given 2 options: to either go to prison for 2 years or go to rehab.
So at this point, we're giving her different options. We're giving her hope of the future that she was, created for. And we just needed a yes. And she came to the point where she was ready, where she said, okay, I'm going to turn and I'm going to go. I want to get help. I want to get out of this. And unfortunately, we didn't have the Yellow House open yet. So what we did was, like we always do, bridge her to the place that we can, get her into, a short-term transition program. Unfortunately, we had to go to Alabama. But we transferred her and relocated her there to a program that we work closely with. We partner with in Alabama. And I will say that it was probably the best thing that ever happened for her.
In that year of rehabilitation, I experienced complete freedom in the Lord, and I experienced His love as a father, and He showed me that regardless of the things that I've done, that I am clean, and I am worthy to be loved, and I'm beautiful, and my identity does not come from this world, and it doesn't come from men, or money, or drugs, but it comes from Him. And He gave me the capacity to love my daughter and love myself. I am now able to see myself through His eyes, and His grace and His mercy has broken the chains that held me down for so long.
We really started seeing a change. we continued contact with her while she was there at the program, anticipating her graduation day and picking her back up. And I could really hear in her voice, the family could see when they went to do visits with her, that something was transforming, something was happening.
But she was also there for me. Taking my calls, when I didn't have an answer for something, or I didn't quite know how to deal, with it all. But she also took my calls and, prayed with me, gave me understanding.
I am almost 2 years sober, and Stephanie and her organization, Be Generous, has had a huge part of me staying sober, because I am able to see myself in other women that are struggling, and it inspires me to help them and love on them and pursue them the way Stephanie did, because she was obedient to the Lord, and that's what I want to be. I want to be obedient to Him, and I can have a connection with these women like nobody else, because I understand what they're going through and I understand how they feel, and I want to be a shoulder for them to lean on, and I want to see them experience the feelings that I have and the freedom that I have, and I want them to be the mothers that they can be and they want to be, and I just want to see the full recovery of the people too.
So what this looks like is so often times we are out in the streets, and we're out in the homes, and we're finding women in these vulnerable places and these vulnerable situations, and a lot of times they are needing to be bridged to detox. Well, after detox, if there's no bed available, then there needs to be a place where they can come to. We want to help them find healing in those places where there's wounds, there's hurts, there's disappointment, there's discouragement, there's despair. We want to be able to find those places with them and help them walk through that, and to help them find a solution. The two keys to this, really working, is their surrender and our support. And so if we could open a home, if we could establish that place of refuge, that safe house, that holding house where they can come to in the waiting and be encouraged and loved and prayed with, and given them a sense of direction as to what the next step looks like. If we could help them in that waiting, then they would be likely to succeed. They would be likely to find that freedom and ultimately the place where God had designed them to be.
Whatever happens, I know that if they're with Stephanie and with her group that's, of support people, that she has support system, that those ladies are going to get what they need, and they're going to make it.
So coming into the Yellow House, of course, we'll assess, and cater to ultimately the needs. We will spend one-on-one time with them, counseling them, dealing with the trauma firsthand. We want to, give them practical things to live by, life skills. We want to take them and give them wisdom to apply to their life.
And we're going to be there to offer them a place of healing, a place of growing, a place of finding the Lord and the purpose for their life. And I think that's so needed.
And so there's just a real grace, there's a real anointing for us to do this work. And Jesus is with us, doing miracles and confirming the message and the power of the gospel as we take steps led by Him to minister to these precious ones.
There's such that need for a temporary holding place of when a girl says, I'm ready to get out of this, I'm ready for a lifestyle change. What an amazing thing it would be to say, hey, we have the house for you. We have a safe place, a safe refuge, a safe haven for you to go, where it's okay, you'll be protected there and be surrounded by faces you already know.
That's our heart, that's our hope, is to rescue the daughters, to help them to find recovery, and to restore and to reunify their families. That's God's heart, and that's our heart.
I really believe that the Yellow House is going to be the answer that many of these women are crying at night for, the answer that they're praying for, the answer that many of them probably believe doesn't even exist for them. In my life when I was going through lots of trauma, I would always say, one day everything's going to change. I just feel like one day I'm going to be out of this. And I really feel like the Yellow House is going to be that one day for so many women where everything changes.